What's going on, everybody? This will be part 4, and I believe this is going to be my final part. Just wrapping up my whole living out of my car situation story. But I do hope that the last part I uploaded encouraged somebody, again, just to let you know that I've been there. And I can guarantee you that there's somebody else out there, other people who are going through what you are going through right now. Um, so yeah, it was a difficult time at times. So where things kind of turned around for me was when during that period I have really good friends who, again, they just figured it out that I needed a place to stay, or that they figured out that I was living out of my car. And my homegirl's husband was just like, Cherie, don't let your pride keep you from having, from asking for help. And so it took me a minute, but I finally said, hey, okay, if y'all are willing to like let me stay here for a minute until I get my finances in order, then thank you. And so that's exactly what I did. So the plan was to stay there between 3 to 6 months and, save money, save jobs, or sorry, work job and save money so I could have enough to move out. Now, and I'm gonna try to keep this 10-15 minutes. So what ended up happening, I ended up moving in. And this was a time where this is right when COVID happened. So this is shut down. This is BLM. So riots were going crazy. This was during that time. And I remember, like, tragically, that's when Kobe passed away. So a lot was going on during this year. And I was 29 and I had made up my mind. I said, okay, before I turn 30, I'm going to do several things. Number one, I'm going to get out of debt. What kind of debt? My credit card debt. And I'm going to pay off my car. Now, at the time, I had 2 credit cards. So, excuse me. So, at first, I had to make a plan. And I knew that, I just remembered following what Dave Ramsey and what some really good friends of mine have told me. It's just pay off the small debt first and then pay off the bigger debt. And that's exactly what I did. So I remember going to the library, because you have to remember, when you living in your car, you know what I'm saying? You can't just go downstairs or go in the living room and get on the computer. So I had to find where public libraries were. I had to find out, I had to make sure I got there on time. There's a whole lot of stuff. So I remember going to the public library and I sat down and I wrote out the plan. I said, okay, I wrote out my goals and I said, okay, this is what I want to do, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3. And it wasn't until some time had passed, I realized I needed to get another job, because if I want to get this done in a year, specifically this year, because at 29, I wanted to accomplish a whole bunch of stuff before I turned 30. And so I just backtracked. So that was when I was living in my car. So now being in my friend's house, I was like, okay, I got to get a second job. So I ended up working at Chick-fil-A as a second job. Now, here's the punchline, or here's the kicker. While I was living with my friends, had a job and I was a flagger at this company. I'm not going to say the name of it, but it was a construction company. And long story short, they fired me. And I don't feel bad about saying that on camera, because they fired me over some shady stuff. They just did. I was catching on things that they were doing, and I would question them about it, or they would see that I saw it. And, over time, they were just like, oh, well, we don't think they let me go. But keep in mind, I didn't really care because at the time, I was realizing that I didn't make enough money anyway. So I was looking for other jobs that paid more. So by the grace of God, I ended up finding a job. Like when they sent me in to, sat me down and said, we're going to have to let you go. I didn't really care because I had a job lined up already. So, and that was a warehouse job. And I held that job down for about a year and a half while still working at Chick-fil-A. So, some time has passed. 3 months, 6 months passed by. And because I've been let go from this job, it was kind of like I went backwards. It was like, yeah, I had a place to stay, but I didn't accomplish my financial goal at this point. Like I'm not on track. And I wanted to get myself together financially with between the 3 and 6 months that I said that I would be at my friend's house. I was like, I don't want to stay no longer than that. And when that had happened, and I still, 6 months had passed, 3 months, whatever it was, and I still wasn't where I was financially. And I said, well, I got to do what I said. And I picked up and I moved back into my car. So cumulatively, I lived out of my car for about 6 months, a year-ish before I moved in with my friends. And then afterwards, I lived in my car for about another year in total. So I've lived a year and a half, 2 years, 2-ish years out of my car, cumulatively. But thankfully, by this point, by the time I worked at the warehouse job, I had landed a job at Chick-fil-A. So I finally had 2 incomes. And what I was doing was I was just stacking all the money. I'd reached my goal so I had a secondary account, right? And I just remembered my secondary account, I wanted it to have $1,000, and anything extra that was going to go to debt. And so that's exactly what I did. So and keep in mind, the only overhead that I had was my car note. And again, this is 2020, 2021. So I didn't have to, you remember how they were like giving people a little bit of extra grace and saying that, their car payments were put down, and they were saying that, you didn't have to pay this because we just recognize everything that's going on, because COVID has shut a lot of jobs down. My situation during that time was the total opposite. Financially, I flourished during 2020, 2021. I made the most money I'd ever made in my life. And I was able to not only get out of debt, but I was able to save, because once all my debt was finally paid off, which I'll get to in a minute, like all the money that I would have been paying for rent and for a car note, all that was just going into my savings account or into my secondary account. So I'm working at this warehouse job, and it was February of 2022, I think, where I paid everything off. I was finally debt free. And I have to tell you, even though I was living out of my car, it still felt so good. You never would have thought that I was living out of my car, because I had money. I had enough money to where I was good. And I remember, finally just being able to walk into the store and buy things that I wanted to buy just because I knew I could, and not feel like I was on such a tight budget. It just felt really, really good. And so understand that living out of your car may not be as bad. It's really not as bad as a lot of people make it out to be. Like financially, it's like, how much further ahead that you'll be, because you don't have to worry about the overhead of rent and bills and electricity. And I'm going to tell you something else. Even during this time, I was living out of my car. The city I was in, like, Because that's also what happened. Y'all remember when PG&E like shut down because of all the fires or whatever had happened? PG&E had like shut down. And let me just respond to my husband real quick. But PG&E had shut down. And a lot of people, they didn't know what to do with themselves. And for me, it was just, I don't know, y'all. It was just because I was living out of my car anyway. I wasn't relying on PG&E for electricity, for gas, to feel warm or none of that. I had my car. Like, my car had everything that I needed. Heat, AC. I mean, if it got too hot and I didn't have anywhere to go during the day, you know what I'm saying? You turn that AC on, roll the window down, go somewhere safe, and you just sit back and you just park in the shade. You know what I mean? There were just so many things I didn't have to worry about charging my phone, because really my phone was all that I needed. Because if you have a smartphone, you pretty much have access to, sorry, I don't know what happened, but my phone just cut off. But yeah, you pretty much have access to everything. And so I didn't have to worry about that because I already had, I have a portable charger in my car. So I was good while everybody was tripping because, oh my gosh, we don't know what to do with ourselves and the electricity's down. And I was just like, man, I am chilling. So if you're living in your car right now, look at the benefits. Check out the benefits of living in your car. It's not as much maintenance. And if you find a safe place to park, you ain't got to worry about creepers a whole lot coming to your car. Now, don't get me wrong. I went to Big 5 Sporting Goods store and I got certified to, it wasn't licensed to carry, but it was like licensed to conceal. So I was able to have a gun. And it wasn't a real gun, but it was a BB gun, just in case some idiot tried to come up to my car while I was asleep and try to rob me or, try to do something like that. So if you're living out of your car, that is a suggestion, that you park somewhere safe and make sure you have something on you to keep you protected. Whether if it's a BB gun, if it's a real gun, if you're licensed, and or some mace, some pepper spray, something. But I also, speaking of that, I also have to give a lot of credit to the Lord. It was by the grace of God, because I will say, out of a year and a half, 2 years that I was living out of my car, I was never hurt once. Nobody ever robbed me. No one ever broke into my car and stole my stuff. Nothing. I was forced to really depend on the protection of the Lord while I was out here. And that's a real thing. So I know everyone who sees this probably ain't saved, but I want to encourage you, man. What can it hurt you to ask the Lord for some protection if this is the situation that you're in? Because you just never know. And like I said, I made sure I did everything I could to stay safe. But ultimately, you can't stop people from doing what they want to do. Especially, like I said, when I first lived into my car, that first year, it was a crazy time. I didn't know a riot could have broke out or anything. And then I remember when the fires were going on, because I'm in California, when the fires were going on, I could have, I was exposed to the elements, and so, or extra exposed because I was outside all the time, but I'm totally fine. So that is part of my testimony. The Lord really took care of me whilst I was living in my car. And so I want to encourage you to trust him. Just trust him if this is the situation you're in right now. And if he's, if you believe that maybe this is self-inflicted, maybe, I don't know, if this is a humbling experience, ask the Lord to show you what you need to see during this time out of living in your car. If it is by choice, even still, I would consider getting, seeking wisdom. Because when I did it, I didn't ask nobody. I just felt like it was something I needed to do. However, I did pray about it. I'm not even going to say that. I made sure that I had a relationship with the Lord while I was out here, and I did ask him to protect me. And so I want to encourage you to don't exclude the Lord during this time. Even if you are upset with him because you're in this situation, I would encourage you to express that anger to him. Express whatever legit emotion, just like in my last video, whatever emotion experience that you are emotional experience that you are having right now, just be honest and expose yourself to him and ask the questions. Ask God why, or ask the Lord to guide you because you feel like maybe this is something you need to do. Whatever the case, I just want to encourage you to stick with him. Even if it is just a little bit, because I know we all have those seasons to where it's like, yeah, God, I didn't leave you, but I just, I ain't spending as much time. I want to encourage you to don't fully go away. And I'm gonna wrap it up with that, because over time, and I do believe that when it's time for you to move out of this situation, no pun intended, the Lord is going to make it clear. He's going to open up a door. Something is going to happen to where you'll see that, okay, it's time to move. It's time to move somewhere else. It's time to not live in my car no more and, get a spot. And I know for me, it was I kind of had to, because out of the 2 years that I lived out of my car, never once, like I said, anyone knocked on my door. No one bothered me, essentially. But after a while, and this was when I got out of debt, when I had saved up money, and I was just like, okay, so what's the next plan of action? Because I'm debt free now. That was when people started calling the cops on me, and they were reporting me like, hey, someone's out here. And I would get, excuse me, ma'am, like, you realize you're in a residential area. If you don't live here, you can't park here. So after a while, it was very clear that, I had to find a place. And even in that was a little bit of a challenge, because, and I'll just say this without saying too much, but I couldn't go back to my grandmother's house. Not because I didn't necessarily want to, it's because she didn't want me there. And so I had a really good cousin of mine who just gave me a hookup and he hooked me up with some places to stay that were really, really, really cheap. Because prior to that, before I told him what was going on, and that was the Holy Spirit too, because he just called me out of the blue and I told him. And prior to him finding out, though, I was spending a lot of the money that I had saved up in, for motels. And y'all know how expensive it is. Not even for like a fancy hotel, but a motel, a Ramada Inn, a Hotel Inn, how much per night that costs. So that really ate up a lot of the savings that I had. But when my cousin found out, he helped me find places to stay that were really cheap, until I found a spot. I found a room that I could rent, that I could afford. So that was my time of living out of my car for 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years. And yeah, it was a grind. It was a struggle. At times it was cold. It was lonely at times. But interestingly, like, I felt more at home and more comfortable living out of my car than I did living with strangers when I was finally able to rent a room, because like my car had become my home. And so, I won't get too deep into that, but I wanted to share that experience with y'all, because again, living out of your car is not that bad if you really stop and think about the necessities and the essentials of what you need. You pretty much have everything you need. And here are some pointers: find an all-night gas station, find places where you can take showers. And at the time, this was COVID, because remember, Planet Fitness had like shut their showers down and there was no public access. So I would find bathrooms that had one stalls where I could take my little bird baths and wash all the important parts. If you know what I'm saying, like, you just got to figure it out. But you can figure it out, is what I'm saying. If you live in your car and you create a strategy for yourself, it's not that bad as the general public masses try to make it out to be. So I want to encourage you that you could do this. If this is your situation right now, again, remember, you're not alone, and there are some good things about this, and take advantage of this time. And again, just know that you can do this, and don't forsake God during the process. And if you need to reach out to me, if this is your situation, I'm here. If I can hook you up with some resources to help your situation, if that's what you need, I'm here. If you just want to talk to somebody, I'm here. Because I get it. When you're living out of your car, it's like all you have is the internet, and whoever you can talk to on the phone can be very lonely. So I hope this encourages y'all. I love y'all, and I mean that. And yeah, I'll be posting this, and anybody else who has a story like this, don't be embarrassed to share it. Don't be ashamed to share it, because I bet you it can help somebody else. All right. I'll see y'all in the next one. And I love you. Mwah.